Really, Firebase is about helping you build better apps and grow successful businesses. And with that, the main goal here, the main point here is that better apps are actually associated with more successful businesses. And why is that? Why is building stable, higher quality apps really related to building better and more successful businesses? To answer this question, we looked at data from Google Play. And specifically, we classified all the one-star reviews on Google Play on what are users complaining about? What didn't they like about this app that they give it a one-star review? And we realized that more than 50% of these one-star reviews are just stability issues. These are not functional issues, these are not missing features in the app, but these are just basically bugs and crashes happening in the app and affecting the ratings. So with that in mind, the quality of the app is one of the most important drivers in the user's retention and engagement. And it can also affect your revenues significantly. So Firebase is trying to help developers build more successful and better apps, but it seems that developers themselves, they are not really focusing on bugs and crashes sometimes. And the reason, basically, developers are not focused on closing these bugs and crashes. And why aren't they doing that? If you look at the mobile ecosystem today, there's a lot of variations in devices, platforms, network conditions, locations, locales, so many things that might go wrong with the apps. So it's really difficult to actually test against all these things before releasing the apps. And this is where Firebase App Quality tools are trying to help. So we looked at our practices inside Google, and we've been building apps for a really long time, and we realized that the key to building higher quality apps is a combination of two things. Being proactive, which means try to prevent the issues before they happen in the first place, and being reactive. So as soon as a new crash starts happening, you want to go ahead and investigate it and fix it in a timely manner. And with being proactive in mind, the tools that Firebase App Quality provides to help you with that, the first one is Firebase Test Lab. So Firebase Test Lab tries to provide you with a testing solution that helps you emulate the actual production environment that your users are currently using your apps on. So for example, we give you access to physical devices, actual phones running in our data centers, and you can, with one click, run your test on Samsung and Motorola, running Android Jelly Bean and KitKat in 2 different languages, in 2 different orientations, 5 different languages. And with one click, you launch all these tests and basically try all these parameters and make sure that your app is working across all these different parameters. The second part about the infrastructure is the virtual devices. So beside the actual physical devices sitting in our data centers, we have an option for virtual devices. These are full Android versions running on a virtual machine. So you can imagine the amount of scaling you can do with these devices. You can launch hundreds or thousands of tests at the same time. So one test that will take 5-6 hours to run can actually finish in just a matter of a couple of minutes. This is how much you can scale with virtual devices. And since we launched at Google I/O this year, our primary focus was to increase the number of devices we have in the catalog. And since Google I/O, we have actually doubled the number of physical devices in our catalog. But more importantly, we worked very, very closely with the Android team on the next generation of Android, the NMR1. And even moving forward, every new Android release is going to have corresponding devices on Firebase Test Lab ready for you, so that you don't have to install these new images on your own devices. You can use them directly on the cloud. We have also listened to users' feedback. The number one piece of feedback that we've got since Google I/O, after we released the product, is that developers want to try that product before they actually commit and enter their credit card and start using it. And as of last month, we have launched a free tier for Firebase Test Lab, which means that without having to enter any credit card information, you can get up to 15 tests. 10 tests on virtual devices, 5 tests on physical devices every single day for free. And this will help you evaluate Test Lab and make sure it fits within your business needs before you can actually commit, or you can just basically use the free tier forever. Now, one of the things I really, really like about Firebase Test Lab is how well it integrates with your existing workflow. We have a web interface where you can, with a matter of a couple of clicks, uploading your APK, selecting some devices, you can run your tests on hundreds of device configurations. We also have the integration with Android Studio. So from within your development environment, when you're actually writing your code, you can say, okay, I'm implementing a new UI feature. I want to make sure that this UI feature works well across different devices, different form factors, and with one click from within Android Studio, you can launch your tests on hundreds of devices. And then my personal favorite here is actually the command line interface. And the reason it's my personal favorite is that it allows you to run these tests from continuous integration environments. So how many of you here know what continuous integration environments are and have used them? Jenkins, Circle, Travis? Very few, which is fine. But I'm hoping that by the end of today, everyone here will at least give it a try and try running their tests on continuous integration. What continuous integration helps you do is that on every change you add to your code, you can build your app to make sure that this change didn't break any of your existing code. And you can run your tests on as many devices as you want on Firebase Test Lab. So you can make sure that existing features in your app actually didn't break. Now, many of you will be thinking, like, now I have to go back and learn a new programming language and start writing a lot of test scripts and setting up too many different things. And the answer is actually no, because of two great features that I really, really like about Firebase Test Lab. The first one is what we call the Robotech. This is an intelligent app crawler that launches your application and tries to navigate through it. So clicking on menus, swiping through screens, going and scrolling through the app, clicking on buttons. And the idea here is we want to expose either crashes, so we can tell you, here's a crash in your app and here's the path leading to the crash. Or we want to expose layout inconsistencies between different screenshots on different devices. And this is what the Robotech allows you to do. We've been working really, really hard in improving the coverage of the crawler. And if you look here, actually this is the Google I/O 2016 app. This app actually runs behind a login screen. And the Robo still managed to create an account and log in through the app and navigate the app until it was able to find a crash in the app. This is an actual demo. This is not even like some demo that we put. Like, we actually crawled the Google I/O 2016 app and we were able to find a crash without the user having to write a single line of code. All they really needed is just the APK. The second feature I'm really, really excited about is an integration we've done with Android Studio to allow you to create test scripts by just using your app. And I'm gonna demo this in a little bit, but this is called the Espresso test recorder in Android Studio. Has anyone heard of it? No? Okay. You're gonna see it right now, and there's gonna be no excuse to not create some test cases from now on. So the Espresso test recorder captures all the interactions you're doing with your screen and allow you to expose all these interactions into a fully reusable instrumentation test that you can then run every time you change your code in your app and make sure that your app is functional. So, to recap, Firebase Test Lab gives you access to devices, gives you access to infrastructure, integrates really, really well with your existing workflow, and it is really, really easy to get started. You don't need a credit card, you don't even need test cases, all you need is your app. We've been working very closely with our partners since our launch at Google I/O, and these are some of our partners. This is Jet, it's a shopping company, and they really like the fact that Firebase Test Lab integrated with their existing workflow and allowed them to launch their tests directly from within Android Studio. So with that in mind, this is what I have about being proactive, which means we try to prevent as many bugs as possible before releasing the app to production. Now the next part is, well, after I actually release my app to production, I want to make sure that if there's anything I've missed, if there's anything that my QA team has missed, I want to go back and fix it right away, but more importantly, I want to know about it right away. And this is where Firebase crash reporting comes into play. Firebase crash reporting collects all the crashes that happen in production and gives you all the information you need to investigate these crashes and go back and fix your app. It is cross-platform, which means it works on Android and iOS, on both Objective-C and Swift. Super easy to install. All you really need to get it starting on Android is just one line in your Gradle config. And on iOS, you need to install the CocoaPod. And that's it, you're up and running. Now, the part that I really like about Firebase crash reporting is that, as we mentioned earlier, app quality is really important for your business. And one of the most important parts about it is that it helps you understand the impact of that crash and how much it impacts and affects your users. So you can triage your crashes and focus on what matters most and what is most important for your users. And another part where it integrates with Firebase Analytics, which means that from within the crash, you can actually create cohorts and measure the effect of a crash on the retention of your users and potentially on your revenue. We've been working closely with our developers and our users for Firebase crash reporting, and one of the features they really, really like is the Firebase crash reporting console. The reason they like it is that it's actionable. It gives you the trends of crashes over time, and it also clusters these crashes for you. So you can look at a specific cluster and triage it, make sure it's the most important thing to focus on at the moment, and then once you triage it, once you start focusing on a certain cluster, it provides you with all the information you need to actually investigate that crash and fix it and go back and take your app to a more stable state. So, as I mentioned, Firebase crash reporting was announced at Google I/O this year, and it was a beta product. We've worked really hard. We've collaborated with our developers community. We've listened to a ton of feedback from our developers, and as of last month, this product is no longer a beta product. So thanks so much for our developer community for all the feedback they've given us, and we're looking forward to working with more and more developers and hearing more feedback in order to make our products a lot better. So while we were exiting beta, we focused on a number of features that our developers really wanted, and they're essential for a good crash reporting module. The first one is actually alerts. So many of you want to know of a new crash or a new cluster of crashes that is happening right away. And with alerts, we actually send you email notifications. You can also do some customizations to enable it on Slack or HipChat or whatever tool you're using for alerting. So that's a very important feature, and thanks to our developer community for making sure that we focus on the right things, and we've launched this already with our exit beta part. The second issue is we've given you the ability to close a certain issue. So once you're done, once you fix a certain crash, you can go back to the console and close it and make sure it doesn't affect any of your trends, as we mentioned earlier in the console. And then finally, we have been providing analytics integration out of the box. So without having to do anything, we give you all the analytics logs leading up to a crash. So you can look at these events and triage them, and also they can help you investigate your crashes and fix your app. With that in mind, that's what I have also about being reactive. So Firebase crash reporting helps you, once a new issue happens, helps you go back and understand what's going on, fix that issue, gives you all the necessary information, alerts you about the issue, and then you can reactively fix your app. So we talked about being proactive with Firebase Test Lab, and we talked about being reactive with Firebase crash reporting. Now let's actually switch to a demo. But before I talk about the demo, let me try to describe the scenario that is leading up to the demo. And it's a scenario that happens to us developers all the time. We wake up one morning with a new alert or a notification about a crash that is occurring in one of our apps. The first thing we want to do is understand the effect of that crash. Is that something we need to focus on and drop everything and work on right away? Or is that something that can wait for the next release of our app and we can just wait a week or so until we push the fix for it? Once we understand the impact of the crash and the effect of the crash and then decide that is something we want to work on, we start by trying to reproduce that crash. We try to find or emulate the exact environment leading up to that crash based on all the data that we can gather about that crash. And once we do that and reproduce that crash, we're going to go to our code and start debugging that crash. So we want to look at the line in the code, we want to understand, set up our environment and start developing and then debug that crash until we can actually fix it. Once we have a fix, we want to release that app with the fix to our users. But more importantly, what we want to do is that we want to avoid that crash from ever happening again. And this is something we're going to talk about today as well. With that, can I switch to the demo now? So, this is the demo, and the first thing I have here is a screenshot of one of the emails that Firebase Crash Reporting provides you, which alerts you of a new crash cluster happening in your app. So this is an example of an email, and then it is telling you like, hey, there's a new fatal cluster showing up in one of your apps, and you should go ahead and investigate it. So you want to click here on View Details. Once you do that, it takes you to the Firebase console. And this is the page that is describing this exact crash. As you can see here, there's information about the version of the app, so it's on version 55. It happened 10 times on 10 different users, and it's happening on API levels 22, 23, 24, and others being 25. It also shows you the devices where this crash has happened on, and then it shows you some stack traces and snapshots about this crash. So we try to gather as much information, whether it's stack traces, whether it's performance data of the device, whether it's some device information, error data, user data, and then if you scroll even further, you can look here at the analytics event. These are analytics events provided to you out of the box that is every event leading up to a crash. So you can see here, select content, level start, level up, level complete, post score, and everything about that crash until a cool new feature was clicked and then the fatal crash started showing up. So we can also look at different snapshots, and it seems the stack trace is pretty consistent here. The message on the stack trace tells us that this is a crash that happens on API levels more than 21. So it seems that there's a pattern here that only occurs on API levels more than 21, 22 or above. So I don't have a device actually that is more than API level 21. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to run a test on Firebase Test Lab on one of the devices that is more than 21, and then see how can I get out of that test. So I'm going to go to the Firebase console here, and what I'm going to do is, this is the Firebase console. I'm going to click on Test Lab, and then hit Run a Test. And I'm going to try to run a robot test. And again, the robot test is the app crawler that we talked about earlier. And to run a robot test, you need nothing but your app. So I'm going to try that right now. As you can see, nothing but my APK. I'm just going to upload my APK here. Which, wow, it worked very quickly. And then you click continue. And then that's it. You can select now which devices and which API levels. So what I'm going to do is I don't care about these. I only care about 22 and above. And try 22 and 23, maybe at 24 and 25 on landscape and portrait, and then I'm going to start 8 tests. Notice here that we're running these 8 tests with just one single click. 2 orientations, 4 different device types is basically the 8 tests. And then the test is about to start. I'm not going to wait for that test to finish. It usually takes like 10 minutes or so because the crawler tries to crawl as much as possible in the app. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight ahead to one of the test results. So this is one of the results on a Nexus 5 running on API level 22. And again, I was able to see the exact same crash that I saw in my crash reporting console. But then what I can do is look at the logs. So I can see exactly the logs on the device leading up to the crash. I can see some screenshots. And this is super cool because notice that these screenshots were obtained for me without me having to do anything. All I really added is just my app, and that's it. And I got all these screenshots for free from within the app. And then if you notice here, this is actually the part where the cool new feature was clicked and that the crash has happened. And then what we can also look at is the activity map. So the activity map here is a description of every step that the crawler has taken. And you can see here, this is the main screen of the app. and then I clicked on progressive. So I started progressive levels. The robo actually, in fact, finished the level, which is pretty impressive. And then it crashed here. So these are the paths. It looked like it went here to the about, flooded, and then it clicked on the cool new feature and then crashed. So this is the path leading all the way up to the crash. Now that I was able to reproduce the crash and understand the exact steps that a user or the crawler has taken to find that crash, I want to go to my code and try to fix it. And what I'm going to do here is, I'm just going to go to the about activity now that I know that it's the right place. And I will see here that someone added this line, if the version is more than lollipop, throw an exception. So it seems that maybe somebody put an Easter egg or something in the demo app, and this is where the exception is happening. So what I'm going to do here is just comment out this line, and this should prevent the crash from happening again. And then, what I want to do, more importantly, besides fixing the issue, is making sure that from now on, this issue actually never happens in the future. And this is where we want to create a test case that covers this case. Even though the robo was actually successful in finding that crash, sometimes in our app there is a certain flow that we want to make sure that it always works no matter what. We always need to cover it with an instrumentation test. For example, if you're testing a checkout flow, this is the most important flow in your business. So you want to make sure it works well no matter what. So this is why you always want to cover it with a test case to make sure that from now on, every code change that happens in my app runs this test, and this test basically covers that change and it doesn't break. So what I'm going to do now is I want to create that test case, and to do that I need to learn Espresso and spend like 5 hours starting. I'm kidding. All I'm going to do here is just go to runs and record an Espresso test. So what we can do here is just record the Espresso test, and I have the emulator up and running right now, here. So I'm just going to record that test. And the way I'm going to record that test is just basically by using my app, nothing else. So right now the app is being built. It's going to take 20 seconds or so. And then it's going to start on that emulator screen. And then everything that I do on that screen, every click that I do is going to be recorded. And at the end of it, I'm going to see a fully reusable Espresso test script that I can run on every code change moving forward. So this is the app, and it seems that the crawler has clicked on progressive or quick play. So I'm just going to click on quick play here. So if you notice here, when I clicked on quick play, it actually was captured, so the event was captured here, and it's showing up in the recorder screen. And then I'm going to keep going, so maybe I can click here on the purple thing, or maybe not. Maybe I can just go here on the menu page, and it tells you here that we selected more options. And then after we select more options, we can go to the info, which is where the about activity triggers. And then I'm going to click on cool new feature. So that's it. That's all the steps really leading up to a crash that I want to cover with the test case. And one thing we can do also with that is add an assertion. And this is really cool. When we're testing something, we want to make sure that this thing is functionally correct on every, so that moving forward, I just check and make sure that the screen is correct. So I'm going to try adding an assertion right now. Adding an assertion will grab a snapshot from the screen, and then it tells you your stats. And one thing I can say, for example, is this your stats. I just want to make sure that the text is actually your stats. So very simple assertion here, and I'm going to save it. And with that, I can complete the recording. It even suggests a name for you, like here's how you want to name that test, and you can save that test. So look what happened here. This is actually super cool. Like this is a functional Android Espresso test case that was created for us without us developers having to learn anything or write a single line of code. It is a fully functional Espresso test script that we can then run. We can actually try running it right now if you want. Let's do that. So we're just gonna run it on the emulator first. So on the emulator, you can see it playing here. Magic. And it passed. So, now the second part is actually, let's try to run it on Firebase Test Lab. So let's take this one test that we recorded on an API level 21 emulator and run the same test on hundreds of devices. So I can go here and on the same screen that I used to run the test on the emulator, I can go to cloud testing. And then here, what I can see is there's a configuration that I created called China GDD demo, which has 3 devices, 2 platforms, 1 locale, and 2 orientations. By the way, I'm gonna run this test right now first. And then, yeah, let's see. Hold on. Yeah, so this is gonna run 12 tests for me. I ran this test once in the past as well, so I'm just going to show you the results. And when I ran this test, I actually didn't fix the bug. I just fixed the bug right now. But when I ran the test, it was supposed to actually work correctly on API levels 21, but fail on API levels 22. And this is exactly what happened here. So if you notice here, the Nexus 5, API level 19, the test actually passed successfully because when I click on the cool new feature, nothing happens. But then on API levels 22 and more, that the test actually fails. So this is a reminder for us to make sure that we always test our apps on devices that cover many of our realistic scenarios and many of our users' devices that we have. We can always go to the Play Store or our analytics data to understand which devices are our users using, which API levels are more popular, and so on. So that's it with the demo. Now it's time to just go and publish your app to Google Play, and that's it. So can we switch back to the slide, please? So let's recap what we just did. We woke up one morning with an alert about a new crash cluster that is happening, and we received that alert from Firebase crash reporting that sent us about this, told us about this new cluster of crashes that started occurring to us recently. We understood the impact of that crash by looking at the Firebase crash reporting console. It told us how many users were affected. It gave us some examples about these users, about their devices, about the environment leading up to the crash, based on data it got from analytics. And then we were able to reproduce that crash by using Firebase Test Lab on one of the devices that we didn't have in our closet, and we were able to successfully reproduce that crash. Once we reproduced that crash, we were able to debug it. We looked at our code and started fixing that crash. And then finally, we had a fix in place, but more importantly, while we were releasing that fix to our users, we created a test case to make sure that this issue never appears again for our users, and we covered it with a test case. So this is the message I'm going to leave you with. App quality is one of the most important factors for the success of your business. So make sure when you're solving a bug or you're looking at a crash, that this is not just a crash happening to some users, this is revenues that I'm losing. And these are users that might never come back to my app. So app quality is one of the most important contributors to the success of your business. And then the second message I want to leave you with is that Firebase App Quality makes caring about and closing these app quality issues really, really easy. All you need to do is build a suite of tests, and we saw that you don't even need to have any coding skills to write that suite of tests. You can use the Robo, or you can record your own instrumentation test with the Espresso test recorder. And then test continuously. Make sure that you trigger these test cases on every change you make in your app. Every new code change has to trigger these test cases, and this will allow you to move a lot faster and iterate faster on your app, and also will reduce the amount of bugs and crashes in your app. And you want to run these tests on so many different devices, like the ones that your users actually do. And then finally, just monitor production for crashes and reactively engage with these crashes to make sure that you close them in a timely manner and very, very quickly. And that's it. Thank you so much. Again, this is my WeChat account, so feel free to add me. And yeah, if you have any questions, let me know.